Startups are in the news now pretty much every day, especially because they are on a fundraising spree. Every other day you hear about another big player who is looking at capital markets, at equity markets with a fresh IPO. And as these companies, which are now large internet retail giants in many senses, undergo scrutiny from investors on their profitability and other parameters, there is another question which is now rearing its head. A report in the Economic Times talks about how delivery partners of companies like Swiggy and Zomato claim that they feel exploited even as these companies raise large number of funds either through capital markets or through private investors. These delivery partners talk about a reduction in pay because of the pandemic. They talk about not getting the benefits of these huge fundraising endeavors. They talk about not being compensated adequately for the high cost of fuel which they have to incur. Now both the companies have responded denying these charges. Zomato in fact claiming that there has been a 20% increase on average in incomes earned by these delivery partners. Swiggy also saying that they have special methods to adjust for fuel increases, etc. But the story is not really only about delivery partners who get you your food when you order something on an app. We've heard of driver partners of companies like Ola and Uber complaining for a while, especially during the pandemic, that they've been hit, they've not been treated fairly. In the context of Swiggy, Zomato kind of companies, restaurant partners also feel that they are not getting their due share. It's time to look carefully and shed some light on this part of this entire ecosystem as well, which is crucial to making sure that these companies continue to find success. After all, if they aren't the right number of people to go and deliver these services to the last mile and to the end customer, how will it actually work out? So to speak on this, I'm joined today by K. Ganesh, serial entrepreneur and promoter of Big Basket, and Rituparna Chakrabarti, Executive Vice President and co-founder of TeamLease. Welcome to both of you and thank you so much for speaking with us today. Hopefully we can look at all sides of the story in what is a very important debate for our time. So Ritu, let me begin by your analysis of the situation. Of course, these companies have created a large number of jobs that didn't exist before, options that didn't exist before, and the flexibility which comes with gig work. But the flip side of it, if you speak to any of these people one-on-one, when you ask for their services and in casual conversations also, seems to be that they are now feeling that they're not getting their due.
Okay, so first I'm glad that we are all acknowledging that the big difference that the likes of Swiggy and Zomato has made in terms of creating alternate options of livelihood for a lot of the youth who otherwise were struggling in the informal sector. So let's begin on that note. Just to set the context, I think while I've been seeing there has been a lot of talk and buzz on this subject, typically, on an average, on a normal day, I'm not talking about the peaks, and I'm probably taking the liberty of speaking on behalf of that segment, that typically the guys or the kids who are doing these deliveries, they are delivering typically 10 orders a day. And they usually end up clocking 26 days in a month. They do make, on an average, without considering peaks or festive occasions, anywhere between 12,000 to 15,000 rupees a month. But of course, this is not in the nature of a wage. It is essentially a commission-based. It's a per delivery. There are no fixed guaranteed income that these kids enjoy, and that's because of the nature of the arrangement. That's what they essentially sign up for. So what we're talking about is per delivery, they're getting about anywhere between 55 to 60 bucks. And I do know, and I'm quite confident when I share this, that there are times and moments when there has been peaks. These people actually ended up earning in a month almost double that amount as well. And I'm aware of such realities as well. Pandemic has had effect on all of us. I mean, all businesses, whether the restaurant sector, whether the Swiggies and the Zomatos, of course, Swiggies and Zomatos towards the when we were recovering or getting used to the pandemic, were beneficiaries. When there were lesser restrictions, people started eating out or ordering in, and so on and so forth. So of course, I don't think we can put Swiggy and Zomato in the same bucket as Ola and Uber. So they have had their business running still because people were ordering in. And if there has been any change in any one of these commissions in the recent times, honestly, Tamanna, I can't talk about it. But just to talk about the broader issue, that what happens when there is a crisis? What happens when the market forces, which actually encouraged a creation of such models of employment or livelihood, the gig environment, when a crisis like pandemic happens, it affects everybody, revenues are shrinking. What should we do? I think the labor laws, which have been written, keeping in mind this reality, actually is taking into consideration, if not everything, quite a few of the challenges that these gig workers face. If you feel that your income is at risk, if you feel like an Ola driver or an Uber driver, that you're not getting passengers or you're not getting bookings and so on and so forth, there is a talk about a social security fund, which is exclusively being created for the gig workers, where people who are in the space.
Ritu, let me stop you there. We'll come to that. No, we'll come to that. We'll come to the new labor laws. I think we should first stick to the topic that we've taken up, and let me get K. Ganesh as well in. So Ritu is looking at the perspective and echoing in a sense what the companies are saying, that hey, we first of all gave you these opportunities. Pandemic has been rough on everyone. Ganesh, you've been on the other side. You know what the opportunities are and what the challenges also are with dealing with a large number of people who are your delivery partners possibly, and that end of the business. Can it be sustainable if the other side doesn't feel it's worth their while? Ritu's talking about an average income of 15,000 rupees a month. These gig workers say they are working 12 hours a day for that, and at many times the high fuel costs go from their pocket. Is it really sustainable as incomes will grow if people don't think it's worth their while? Is it time to re-look at the model and be more inclusive in your view?
Yeah, no, so I think there are multiple aspects to it. There is no one clear-cut straight answer. It is a once in a century pandemic. Therefore, obviously, like Ritu mentioned, everybody is stressed and stretched. So it's quite obvious that the pressure is being felt by all sections, including the gig workers. Unfortunately, during such pandemic crisis times, the best is to have a government job, where whether you like it or not, your salary gets credited and the government prints more money or collects more taxes or runs a deficit program and pays you. That's the most ideal. Next ideal to that is working in a large corporate MNC or a Tata's or a Birla's company, where you have implied safety net that exists. The worst end of the spectrum is to be self-employed or be a gig worker. That's the nature of it. You get the flexibility, you get the upsides of working when you want to work, not logging off when you don't want to log off, and during peak times get higher returns for same amount of time. But it comes with no safety net, no security that exists. So my heart goes out to delivery boys. That's point number one. Point number two, with the fuel prices fluctuating almost every day, it is impossible for any corporation to fix a company. Absolutely, delivery boys are right. In a gig economy where they get compensated, the price has been fixed. Last week, I paid 104 rupees in Nilgiris for a liter of petrol. I was stunned. Before that, I never paid 100 rupees. So you're talking about a significant difference. So there will be a certain lag between the time that gets adjusted. So during that time, the delivery boys will be out of pocket and facing the pressure. Hopefully the adjustment will happen not daily basis, on discrete basis will get done. But the real solution there is that these are people who are their own bosses. These jobs have been created out of nowhere by delivery companies, by Uber and Ola, by Big Basket and Flipkarts of the world, and all of those stuff. These jobs did not exist. The nature of the job is of gig economy, because if they were to employ these people and pay them a fixed salary, it's just not viable, because the peak demand is very high. Now, What happens in such kind of market?
So let me come back with a couple of points. One minute, Ganesh. You made a few important points. Let me come in on them. So you started by saying that pandemic has hit everyone. The only way to be safe in pandemic is to have a government job or a corporate job. But has pandemic been equally harsh on Zomato and Swiggy, for example, because we're talking about that as the new spec? Has it really been equally harsh for them? People started ordering even more because they were at home. We had record orders coming in. You've had record fundraising by both companies. So they're not really in a pathetic state because of pandemic. So I'm not sure if that is a fair comparison. The contrast becomes stark when people who fuel the growth of this company literally, because they are the ones delivering the product at the end of the day, say that, listen, we are struggling while you are doing very well. How about addressing that specific issue, Ganesh?
No, I think that is absolutely true. I really wish when we talked about the valuations and the IPO and the ESOP creation, a portion is carved out for the gig economy workers linked to the growth of the company. So the point is valid that just because they are gig economy workers doesn't mean they are not contributing to the growth, operations and running of this company. So a kind of ESOP pool for the gig economy workers who work in your company so that they are able to share in wealth creation, I think is needed, is the innovative way of looking at it. That must be done. But having said that, don't confuse valuation and listing of a company with what the pressures the company is facing. Because Zomato and Swiggy, and we have 4 businesses in the food tech space which ride on Zomato and Swiggy, they have seen 50% drop in orders. Forget the public posturing by the founders of these companies because they are going public. The bottom line is the number of orders came down to 50%. Why? Because some places were shut. There were people who were afraid to order from outside during initial days and all of those stuff. Even today, I can tell you, if you look at the actual numbers, it has not come back to pre-pandemic numbers. Yes, like Ritu mentioned, compared to Ola or Uber, which is shut because of lockdown, because of the exceptions given and essential delivery categorization of food delivery and e-commerce delivery situation is only 50-60%. Uber, Ola during lockdown would have been less than 5 to 10% of their normal. So therefore, there is very clearly, there is a pain being felt. But obviously, at a situation and pain being felt at the same time, people are celebrating 1 lakh crore of IP, of market capitalization and people getting hundreds of $millions of ESOP, carving out a bit, creating a pool for this from the IPO proceeds is very, very valid. The government and the companies together, similar to PF scheme, EPF scheme and all of it, and Ritu can talk about the schemes better than I can do, need to create some kind of, create reserves so that these people get protected. At the basic minimum, their healthcare, their basics of health should be taken care of. Whether can we get into the level of giving them a simple minimum basic income every month is very, very difficult. I don't want to kill the model, because the moment you start,
that's not the model. Yeah. No, absolutely. You can't kill the model. You can't turn this into a union kind of situation, but you can't turn a deaf ear either to concerns saying that, hey, because of us, you even have a job. Ritu, let's look at this. Let's look at this very practically. Okay, the point is that today, do these workers have other options? Perhaps not. That's why they're going on with a situation that they are not very happy with. If and when that changes, because it's an eventuality that the market will open up, there will be more options. The kind of boom we're seeing in this space means there will be more and more of a demand for delivery partners or other people who are working as part of the gig economy. Can companies afford to have a large workforce feeling vulnerable? I'm using the word vulnerable because the sense is that we don't really matter. Each person individually is easily replaceable. You want to do the job, do it. You don't want to do it, log off. We make the rules, play by those rules, or my way or the highway. Can that work as the space grows and the need for a stable delivery force or a stable workforce in the gig sector as well will be paramount to continuing success?
So first and foremost, I think I'm absolutely sensitive about what's going on and the pain that is being felt by the delivery boys, especially for the paper delivery-based delivery boys who are engaged in that model. But I think there, of course, has been a little bit of play out on account of the hype that has been created, like Ganesh mentioned, on the IPO and the proclaimed success. And of course, it's a successful IPO, but that is not, and the valuations and all are linked to the future potential of these businesses. And I'm not too sure it is linked to the current performance, the P&L performance of these businesses. So leaving that aside, pandemic has thrown upon us many challenges and vulnerabilities in the workforce, not just the gig workforce. There could be varying shades of vulnerability even in the formal workforce. They're like the retail essential sector. They have permanent jobs or they have proper jobs, but they are still feeling equally vulnerable because, or the lifestyle sector, about what's happening, hospitality, aviation. So all these workforce are feeling vulnerable at this point of time. When we are talking about the gig, we have to first uphold that if we try to compare it and make it equal to a normal employment, it will pretty much compromise the very premise on which many of these businesses exist today. So any such attempt is going to be harmful, and especially for a country like India, which has a massive informal workforce who've got a breath of relief because of these models. I would actually recommend that rather than looking at it as a pandemic phenomena, we need to come out with long-term solutions for such vulnerabilities. Today there is a pandemic, tomorrow there could be some other force majeure situation. And hence, how do we handle those? I don't think we can ever make a promise to gig workers that you will earn exactly the same amount that you were before a crisis. However, again, that's why the execution of the Social Security Fund that the government talking about under the Social Security Code, specifically for the gig workers, is to ensure that there is a minimum threshold that is being made available to the gig workers so that they can fend through the crisis. There is also talk about giving them a basic protection under a health insurance scheme. So I think that's the way forward. Honestly, rather than reacting to a particular situation revolving around certain organization, we should put our efforts in terms of such things will happen, such accidents will happen. And hence, what's the long-term solution to help gig workers without compromising the model? And I feel that that's why it's so important to get the government to bring down the rules and get the 4 labor codes executed as quickly as possible.
See, I also feel this kind of marketplaces have a certain unique nature which is not there in a normal employment. So what happens in marketplaces like this, there will always be a catch-up game, I mean, cat and mouse game or a catch-up game. You will have a situation where unless there is a critical mass of, for example, riders or drivers available in a locality, you will not be able to attract customers to come in. Because customers will come in because in Uber or Ola, you have to wait only for 2 to 4 minutes, for which you require certain, say, 500 drivers in Koramangala area or Indiranagar area in Bangalore. Okay, right? Now, the moment you have 400 or 500, then only the wait time reduces to a level where customers will start coming in. But you increase this number further, then what happens? Then you have a lot more drivers available. Okay, right? But at the same time, everybody will not get a ride. They will not be able to learn the job. So that's a challenge. So at that time, what you need to do, you need to readjust. So that is the unique nature of the marketplaces, that as from demand side or supply side, one or the other always will be pulling the other person down. Take the reverse, where you have less drivers, the customers have to pay surge pricing. We have seen how the prices have gone 2x to 3x. That hurts the customers. Customers will no longer use Uber or Ola because prices are high. So there will be such mismatch that will get ironed out over time. It is a feature of the gig economy and marketplaces. Pandemic has unfortunately created huge amount of pressure for everybody, including this. But otherwise, let this play out. Don't try to intervene too much. My heart does go out to the people who are suffering because the prices are going up, inflation is going up, the business is down. So everybody is suffering. If you are in a normal job, you have a danger of being laid off. You are getting from 100 to 0. Here, at least you are getting from 100 to 50. So there is some silver lining in gig economy. You can go and find some other job. Imagine a person who has worked for 20 years as a driver in a corporate. Where does he go? He's 50-year-old driver. Nobody is going to employ him. He is gone. Okay, right? Whereas the Uber, Ola driver, even at
No,
50%.
Ganesh, I understand that. I understand that, but I'm not sure that's the only way to look at it. Yes, pandemic has been harsh on employment overall. It has been harsh on employment. Apart from engineers who are in great demand from startups, a large section of people seem to be suffering from lack of options. So that is a
Absolutely,
given.
90%,
But is that
90%.
enough reason to
Tamanna,
say be happy with what you get?
No,
Is
no.
that
See, that's
is
not
it
the
fair
point.
to say that look at everyone suffering, so just quietly take what you get? I mean, I'm
Tamanna,
saying this
I
has
have
to be
to-
looked at closely from all aspects, isn't it?
I have to bring up
Yeah, Ritu,
one
Ritu.
point. There is a lot of discussion around the responsibility towards this individual. By the principle of employment, the person who is the person where I finally render my services or my efforts and hard work is considered the principal employer, which means that person and that employer becomes responsible for my professional and statutory upkeep. Okay. In this case, in the gig work, there is a huge difference. The Zomatos and the Swiggies are actually aggregators. They are not the one who's finally availing of the services being rendered by the delivery boys, which is you and me, by the way. So this arrangement is also very interesting. This entire of platforms and technology.
It's
they're basically
unusual.
connecting-
It's unusual, Ritu. Yeah, no, it's unusual, but there is a loophole
would you
there,
make
isn't
the
it? That's
employer?
a
So who is
loophole.
their employer?
I'm sure you're not saying. I'm
what
sure
I'm
you're not.
saying,
I'm
Tamanna,
sure
is
you're
that-
not at any point suggesting that the person who receives that burger and fries is responsible for the petrol prices. They are paying a delivery
No, the
charge.
point- and
There is a delivery charge which comes with your
So that's-
order.
So essentially, that's the question: that how do you share the responsibility? Like, who essentially is the one who's responsible? Because everyone is benefiting from it. The restaurant is benefiting. I, as a consumer, is
Well,
benefiting, and
yeah.
so is it is actually a part of the entire debate of gig work today. By the way, that finally, who is
Well,
the one?
it's an interesting debate with a lot of aspects. Yeah, it's
I
an
know,
interesting.
I
We'll
know.
end it
I
here,
don't
but
wanna-
it's an
I
interesting
don't wanna
debate
get
with a
into
lot of
that.
aspects. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, the guy making the rules also has responsibility to make sure that the game is played fairly. I will just leave it at that. And let's hope that going forward there is an amiable way where everyone participating in this whole startup revolution, I would say, from customers to young entrepreneurs who have these fantastic ideas to engineers to, yes, the guy or girl on the bike getting you that service to your doorstep, everyone equally benefits. That's when it will make a huge change to the Indian economy. Thank you so much, Ritu and Ganesh, for joining us on this very interesting debate.
Thank you.
The Olympics